Hello my amazing people, and welcome back to my channel. If you're back, if you are new, welcome to my channel. I'm Shayna, and I actually have an update on the Millette case for you all today. Just my usual disclaimer, this is all information that I have found online that I've compiled into a video for educational purposes. I have been very invested in Maya's case from the very beginning, and I am relieved to see that there is finally some movement in her case, which is why I wanted to bring this update. It was only right. And I wanted to also say, before I get started on the video, I've mentioned to you guys that there's construction happening outside of my apartment. It's driving me absolutely berserk. It's still going on. Bear with me. But the good news, I have listened to your feedback, and I actually invested in a microphone. I actually had a microphone that I was using when I was recording videos on my phone, but when I got my camera, the microphone of course wasn't compatible with the camera. So I've been using just the audio on the camera, and I was like, look, if my channel starts to grow, maybe I'll invest in a microphone because they are expensive. So now that I'm where I am right now, I decided to listen to my subscribers' feedback. I did invest in a microphone that will be implemented into my videos starting in my next video. So this is the last time you will have to hear this audio quality. If you're in my first 10,000 subscribers, y'all the OG crew, so I appreciate y'all who have been with me since the beginning. But there is always a time where you can improve, and now is the time for me to level up. So I'm very excited to implement that nice improvement into my videos, and thank you for your feedback. Always give me feedback. If you have feedback, I want to hear it, so always share it with me, okay? But without further ado, I will be giving you a synopsis of the missing persons case of Maya Millette. There is another video on this. Well, there is a video on this on my channel already, where I looked into everything that we knew back at the time that I made that video. I believe I posted that in April, and Maya went missing in January. So it has been some time. It's been 9 months. So since it's been a while since I posted a video, I am going to give you an overview of the case. I'm going to start from the beginning, and then I'm going to give you the most recent update that everyone is starting to hear about. So without further ado, thank you so much for joining me today, and let's get started. Maya Millette, who also goes by May, was a mother of 3 children who lived in the Chula Vista area of California with her husband, Larry Millette. She was a family girl. She loved her family. She was very tight to all of her siblings. She had 5 siblings, 5 or 6, and they all were really close, and she had a huge family. Maya also was beautiful. I mean, you can tell by the photos, she is a stunning woman, and she did not look like she was in her late 30s, in my opinion. I think she is gorgeous, and she was just the type of person who was happy-go-lucky. She was a free spirit, and she loved wine tasting. She liked driving her Jeep around. She was just that girl. And she had a long marriage with her husband, Larry. They had been together for 18 years at the time that Maya went missing. And their marriage was pretty good for most of it. But towards the end, the last couple years, last months, things were really going downhill for them, and the downward spiral really took a turn in 2020. That year was really tough on the relationship between Larry and Maya, and they had gotten to the point in their marriage where in their big beautiful home they weren't really a married couple anymore. They were sleeping in different rooms. They were kind of living in a roommate style situation and just trying to figure things out for the sake of the children. And Maya actually got to a point where she said to one of her family members, look, I'm done trying to fix it. I'm done trying to hold out and make this work for the kids. It's actually time for me to move on. But she hadn't gotten to a place where she was ready to actually pull the trigger and actually file for divorce until the beginning of 2021. Larry had some very erratic behavior about him. He would go down to Maya's job, basically demanding that Maya work in different locations than her male co-workers. He was constantly accusing her of cheating on him. It was a very unhealthy dynamic, and Maya was just sick of it. And he had some borderline like crazy behavior. It wasn't a good situation anymore, and she saw it. And she said to her family, if anything ever happens to me, it was Larry. Like, she had this feeling that he wasn't at the point where he was just trying to hold on to the marriage. He was at the point where he was willing to do literally anything to hold on to this marriage, and he didn't want her to leave him even though she was already ready to go. January of 2021, she finally gets to the point where she is ready. She decides to contact a divorce attorney, and she made this move on January 7th. January 7th of 2021, Maya contacted this divorce attorney, and that same evening, her and Larry had a huge argument. Now, Maya was the type of woman who was in constant communication with her family and her friends. She was active on social media. She was always in the family group chat. She was the person who was bringing everybody together and always in consistent communication. So on January 8th, when the family didn't receive any messages from Maya, they were concerned. Not only was this unlike her, but she was also planning a birthday party for one of her children. One of her children was actually turning 11 years old, and she was so excited to plan this birthday party. So for her to not contact anybody on the 8th, it was just a little too out of the ordinary. Her sister is Mary Chris. Mary Chris, when she couldn't get Maya on the phone, she tried to call Larry, and she tried to call 2 of their 3 children who had cell phones, and she found that all of their phones were going to voicemail. All of their phones were turned off. There was no ability to get in contact with any of them on the phone. And at this point, she starts to worry, but she's like, okay, maybe there's just something going on with their phones. Like, she had no reason to think that anything was amiss. So one of Maya's brothers makes his way over to the house just to do an actual check-in, since nobody could get them on the phone. And when he gets to the house, Larry's there, the kids are there, and Larry says, hey, what brings you over? And the brother's like, we've been trying to call Maya, we've been trying to call you guys, but nobody's answering, so I just wanted to make sure everything's okay. And Larry says, oh yeah, sure, no problem. Me and Maya had a really big argument last night, but you know, if you want, you can go and check. She should be in the bedroom. I think she locked herself in the bedroom because she doesn't want to talk. I haven't seen her much today. So the brother goes up to the bedroom. He tries to open the door. It's locked. He knocks on the door, but he doesn't get any response. And he's just trying to see if maybe she'll respond through the door and just say, hey, I don't want to talk, but he doesn't get any answer. So he just figures, okay, she's probably just either sleeping or she just really doesn't want to be bothered right now, and he decides to leave. Still no communication from Maya the rest of that night. So the following day, her father makes his way to the house and says, look, Larry, I gotta talk to Maya. We haven't heard from her. What's going on? Larry tells him the same thing. She hasn't been down from the bedroom, and I haven't been able to talk to her. We had a bad argument. She just doesn't want to talk. The father says, well, I'm gonna go up there and I'm gonna go in the room. So either I'm gonna break the door down, or do you have a key? Like, how are we gonna do this? Larry is able to magically find a key to the bedroom. He and Maya's father go inside, and there is absolutely no sign of her. She is nowhere to be found. And the father's looking at Larry like, you didn't notice that she has been missing for a couple days now? Like, where is she? And Larry says, oh yeah, she probably just went out wine tasting with her friends. She liked to go wine tasting, so that's probably what she's doing. At this point, the family is concerned, but they still have no reason to believe that Larry is responsible for anything at this point. They're just thinking, okay, maybe he just hasn't been paying attention, but it's still very out of her character to not communicate with us. This is not like our daughter, our sister. And they decide that they are going to move forward with reporting Maya missing. Larry was adamant with the family that the last time that he heard Maya in the house was January 8th, which was the day after the entire family had last heard from her. And he was very sure. He was like, look, I know that I heard her in the kitchen on the 8th cooking. So that is the last time that she was seen by anybody, by me. And the family's like, okay, that sounds good, but we didn't hear from her at all on the 8th. So the family actually decides to talk to one of the children and ask them, when is the last time you saw your mom? And the child says on the 7th. So from that moment, especially, the family was starting to feel like, okay, something's not right here. We don't know what's going on. But Mary Chris and her husband have been very vocal about, like, the moment that they started to feel like Larry might have had a little bit more of a hand in it than he was letting on. And she was just like, why are the stories not lining up with the days that you're saying you saw Maya and when the kids are saying that they saw Maya? And then why were your phones turned off the day that we were all looking for her? So suspicion was starting to rise at this point. And after Maya is reported missing and still no one had heard from her, searches begin. There were very large searches for Maya. And it's important to note that Larry didn't participate in any of the searches. He didn't participate in any search. And his willingness to speak to the media was very slim. He did one phone interview when Maya first went missing, and then after that he retained a lawyer and refused to talk to the media at all until he did one more time. And this time that he talked to the media, it wasn't in an effort to bring more awareness about Maya missing. It was strictly just to basically say, look, I don't have anything to do with this and I'm sick of people accusing me. I haven't fully gotten into why people were thinking that Larry might have been responsible for Maya going missing, but his behavior from day one, not participating in the searches and not communicating with the media, had everybody kind of side-eyeing him. Aside from that, Larry was pushing this narrative that Maya left of her own volition. They were having marital problems. She wasn't happy. She probably just up and left to get some time to herself. But the family was not buying this. Maya would not leave her children. She was a mother hen. She would not have left her children, especially not being there for her child's birthday party that she was so excited to plan. She was so excited. And the day that this birthday came and she still wasn't there, there was just this like cloud over everyone in the family, because they really knew the moment that Maya missed her child's birthday party that she didn't leave on her own. But Larry insisted, and even though Larry continued to insist that Maya had to have left of her own accord, it wasn't supported in reality, because she had no activity on any of her credit cards, on her debit cards. There was absolutely no activity. She had no activity on her cell phone. Her car was still at the house. Like, who just ups and leaves? Who leaves on foot and then just doesn't use any of their debit or credit cards? Nobody. So while he was still insisting that she had to have left on her own, the family was like, this is not like her. She missed her child's birthday party and there's no activity on any of her accounts. She didn't leave on her own. When the heat was really falling on Larry and the family was starting to question him about what he knew, he actually decided to cut off the family from having any communication with Maya's 3 children. He didn't let them text, he didn't let them call, he didn't let them spend time. Larry basically blocked the children off from the rest of the world, including Maya's family. It just didn't make sense for him to do this unless he was guilty. On January 11th, an attorney named Mr. Little made his way over to the household, which he basically, from what I could tell, was a friend of the family. And he made his way over to do what he presented to be a check-in with Larry, to see how he was doing, to see if he could help at all in finding Maya. And when he got to the house, he noticed right away that all of the windows were open. And he noticed this because obviously he also went there to see if anything looked out of the ordinary. And the first thing that he noticed were all the windows were open. And according to neighbors that he had talked to in the neighborhood, those windows had been open for days at this point. And the 11th is 4 days after Maya went missing, so around the same exact time frame. Larry lets him into the house, and when Mr. Little gets into the house, he notices that there are fans blasting. And for the windows to be open and the fans to be blasting, I mean, it is California, so it's not super cold. So for the windows to be open maybe isn't that strange, but under the circumstance that his wife had recently gone missing, it is something to be aware of. And there were absolutely no smells in the house, like no scents. So from somebody like me who's just looking at everything that's presented, this appears to be maybe someone who had cleaned up a scene. There were smells of cleaning products and an attempt to get rid of the smells being made at this point. Mr. Little takes a walk through the house. He looks around, see if there's anything else out of the ordinary, and he does see one more thing. There is a patch on the wall about 10 inches by 8 inches, so a pretty large patch where he can tell had been recently plastered over. So perhaps a hole had been there. And he asks Larry, he says, what happened here? Is there, like, what happened? How did a hole happen in the wall? And Larry was like, oh, I don't really remember, but it's been there for quite some time. And Mr. Little remembers that he touched it and it was damp. So obviously he knew that this plaster hadn't been placed there a long time ago. It had been placed there recently. So not only was It's suspicious that the house was basically being purged of any smells whatsoever, but also there was this giant hole in the wall with plaster that Larry was now lying about. Mr. Little made an attempt to talk to the neighbors, like I said, who told him that the windows had been open for a while, but also he talked to somebody who had a doorbell camera who actually had checked the doorbell camera footage, and they told Mr. Little that there was no sign of Maya on the doorbell cam. This faced directly to the Millette's household. She didn't come or go from the house on the 8th at all. And in fact, the only movement on the 7th that they saw was not from Maya still. There was no sight of her on the night of the 7th, just Larry. And what Larry was doing, he got actually into his car, pulled it into the driveway, backed it into the garage, and then pulled back out. And then the night of the 7th, he was seen a few more times coming and going. But there was never any sighting of Maya leaving the house on the 7th or on the 8th. There was only this very strange activity of Larry presumably putting something into his car that he didn't want anyone to see. Not only that, this doorbell camera also picked up what is almost 100% certain to be gunshots, a series of gunshots that were heard, and the sound of children's voices as if the children were outside at this point. So, and this is the middle of the night on the 7th. At that point, in the court of public opinion, Larry was the primary suspect, but he hadn't actually been named a suspect. He was just being considered a person of interest at this point. But when the audio had come out of the gunshots and it was released that there was no sighting of Maya on the 7th, only Larry coming in and out of the house and putting things into the trunk of his car, everybody kind of knew at that point that this was a grim story and that Larry most likely made Maya disappear. There were 85 people interviewed since January. There were 65 search warrants issued, and there were over 100 tips followed up on. And a lot of people were concerned about bringing Maya home. There were people outside of the home every night. There were people doing searches like every week. There were people having rallies in Maya's memory every week, just saying like, we need to bring her home. And in those search warrants, obviously the home of the Millettes was searched, and there were firearms found inside the home that Larry had registered. There were firearms that were not registered. He actually had his firearms confiscated under a temporary restraining order that he had against him, and it just wasn't looking good for Larry at this point. But also they found there was a photo of one of his children on their kitchen table surrounded by firearms, which is very creepy, very kind of sinister to think about. You would want to have them as far as possible from firearms if you use logic and reason, but moving on. Not only that, on his computer, he had searched plants that make you go to sleep and never wake up. He also searched for sedative like drugs, and to be specific, and I know that I'm gonna butcher these, flunitrazepam is one, ropanol, and diphenhydramine. Yes, basically these are central nervous system sedatives and depressants that can be used to incapacitate somebody. I know I butchered them, but those are the things that he was searching for. And in the midst of these searches, he also searched, my wife doesn't want me to touch her. So you can infer what you will from that, but I think we all can kind of put the puzzle pieces together. And police thought it was really weird that Larry's devices were turned off on the day of the 8th, and basically they asked him where he was because they knew that he had left his home the night of the 7th, and he told them that he had gone to a place some miles away. But then when asked to point out on a map where he went, he pointed out a different place. So police were like, are you trying to mislead us? And at this point, because his phone was turned off, there was no way to track where he was. Either his phone was turned off or he didn't take it. It's one of the two. There was no way to track where he went to help us find Maya. But police did find a shrine that was set up with a photo of Maya, some candles around it. They also found some emails that were quite concerning that were sent to someone that he was requesting to basically cast a spell so that Maya could break a bone or be hurt to the point where she needed Larry because she was only nice to him when she needed him, is what the emails were saying. So he was basically doing everything he could to put a spell on Maya, to put her in a position where she had to depend on him. And then when he realized that his efforts were not working and she was still not going to stay, he began looking at more extreme measures. And people believe that since she took the step of looking for a divorce attorney and calling the divorce attorney on the 7th. Larry just lost his mind. He snapped. He said, if you're not going to be with me, you're not going to be with anyone. And the really eerie thing that I still think about sometimes is how Maya told one of her family members that if anything ever happens to me, it was Larry. Like, she knew that he was a ticking time bomb. She knew that at any moment he could snap because his behavior had been so erratic. She probably knew the crazy things he was searching for on his computer. She probably knew about the shrines. She knew that there were things that didn't seem to be of sound mind happening within Larry. And for it to end so grimly, it just gives you chills because she kind of forewarned everybody about this. And her sister Mary Chris said in an interview that every time Larry would call, they would try to help him, give him advice on saving the marriage, but all of that time and energy that they poured into him, they wish they would have poured into Maya and making sure that they got her out of the situation safely. I'm sure you can infer that Larry has been arrested. He was arrested on murder charges just this week in October of 2021, 9 months after Maya went missing. And this is one of those cases where he's being accused of murder, but we don't have a body. We don't know where Maya is still. Larry is still not talking. And Mary Chris actually did an interview that is so gut-wrenching, is so emotional, and she basically is just appealing to the public to please not give up. Even though there's been an arrest made, we still don't know where Maya is. And she's begging everyone to still continue to help to bring Maya home. Police have not released what evidence that they have against Larry, but apparently it is overwhelming. Obviously, the things that I presented to you today are circumstantial evidence that seem to point us in the direction of Larry Millette, but I'm sure police know even more than the public knows. We try to be detectives as much as we can. You know, we try to see what we can learn from online sources and from what we hear because we care about the victims, but the police always know a lot more than they release to the public, and that is for a good reason, because if we had all the information, we'd probably sabotage the investigation because we talk about things so much. But it is, you know, a relief to hear that Larry was arrested because we all kind of knew that he was the person behind this, but I don't think any of us knew that he would be arrested because it took 9 months. You would think that he'd probably be arrested right away, but you know, he wasn't. So I'm just glad that we're finally seeing some movement in the case, and I hope that Larry has the dignity to come out and tell the family where Maya is. I hope that he does this so that the children grow up knowing that their mom didn't leave them, that Maya didn't abandon them. I hope that he helps the family have the closure of being able to lay Maya to rest. And I just hope that he comes to a point where he acknowledges what he did. But based on his behavior, I don't know if there's a disconnect up here. I don't know if, you know, there's something else going on behind the scenes up here that we just don't know about. But it is quite sad, and I've been very invested in this case. I've been very invested in the Alexis Sharkey case, which there's been updates about that. If you are interested in updates about that, let me know. I can do another video. There's been a whole ordeal with Tom Sharkey. I'm very invested in the Orrin and Orson West case that I still don't think there's any movement on. The last time I looked into it was about 3 weeks ago, and there was nothing. I get very invested in these cases. So I just want everyone to know that I do these cases because I actually care. Like, I actually do care about the people that I talk about. I think there's a fine line with true crime YouTubers, if that's what you want to call us, because I don't think that everybody presents the stories with respect and with the victims and their families in mind, but I do try to do that. I say all this to say I'm just glad that there is finally some movement in Maya's case, and I hope that we do get to bring her home. It's very sad that we are pretty positive that she will not be alive when we find her, but at least hopefully we have that resolution of being able to give her a proper burial, proper resting place. I'd like to know what you guys think about this case. Have you been following it from the beginning? Like, do you remember back in January when this happened and everybody was talking about it, and now, like, I don't want to say people forgot, but nobody's really talking about the update as much? I did see one channel do an update, but do you guys remember? Like, how do you feel about this case? Did you know from the beginning that it was Larry? Because I think most of us kind of did, but you know, everybody's innocent until proven guilty. You don't want to falsely accuse someone of something until the police do first, right? Because you don't want to get sued out here. We all kind of knew that something wasn't quite right with that Larry guy. My, I guess, biggest thing that makes me sad when I think about this case is her children, because the oldest is 11 years old. They're at such vulnerable places in their lives. Obviously, losing your parent or parents at any age is hard, but having a baby grow up without their mom and now without their dad because he was the one responsible, it's just a very sad thing to think about. So now, luckily, that Larry is behind bars, they can be with Maya's family and have that support system. But it's still, that's the saddest part, is that their father, who they're supposed to trust the most in the world, right, took out the one other person that they trust the most and love the most in the world. And now because of that, they have neither one of them. So it's just like a really horrible thing when you really sit back and think about it. But that is where I'm going to stop this video. I know that I ramble sometimes, so it's time for me to cut it short. I thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for joining me today, and I want you to know that I don't say that lightly. I truly appreciate and value every single one of you. There's some of my subscribers who comment on every single video, and I'm like, you have no idea what that means to me. I'm about to get emotional. I'm so soft. I'm as soft as a teddy bear. But it just means the world to me, and I appreciate all of you guys, and I hope to continue growing. But the people who are here with me, like in the start, y'all really like the OGs. And every day I wake up, I'm like, there's people out there who support me, and that's a really good feeling. So if you have any case suggestions, feel free to go throw them in my DMs on Instagram. Even if I don't respond, I promise I do see them. There are some that I'm still trying to catch up on, a couple cases that were recommended to me that were really important for me to follow up on that I'm working through. If you have any recommendations, you can find me over on Instagram at sunnyshade.v. Following is not required, but I do recommend that you subscribe to this channel because your girl's posting content, and I mean, you might as well just subscribe while you're here. There's no reason not to. There's no reason not to. But you know what I'm gonna say? You know what I'm gonna say? I'm gonna say it. Are you ready? You know what I'm gonna say. If you made it this far, you are loyal. You really are, and I appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful morning or afternoon or evening, depending on what time it is when you watch this video. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Peace.